So I just watched Malignant and It's been 5 years since James Wan has directed a horror movie, and he's hoping that Malignant will be something fresh for fans of his previous work.
You know, you just gotta be bold. You gotta take chances, because if you don't, you end up making the same old thing again and again.
In all seriousness, I was completely surprised by this film. James Wan has been making some of the better studio horror movies for over a decade now, and while they aren't exactly my favorite kind of horror movie, they all have some serious craft behind the scares that help separate them from, let's say, lesser popcorn horror movies. At any rate, it seems everything this guy touches becomes a hit franchise. It started with the original Saw. There's the Insidious movies, then of course The Conjuring with its countless sequels and spin-offs. So for fans of the James Wan horrorverse, it's pretty exciting to see him return to his roots. Though if you're expecting something like The Conjuring or even Insidious, I think you'll be surprised by this one. At least I was. Malignant tells the story of Madison, who starts having visions of brutal murders shortly after experiencing a traumatic break-in. After seeing the trailers, I thought I was in for another run-of-the-mill supernatural horror haunted house movie. Instead, what I got was a pretty campy and fun love letter to more than a few subgenres of horror that we don't really get to see anymore. Mostly, the movie operates like an Italian horror thriller or giallo in both its structure and style. And like any good giallo, there's a real whodunit/mystery aspect to the movie, with a splash of supernatural elements and plenty of twists throughout, which is why I must warn you about I won't be going into too much detail here, but there's a big reveal towards the end that really pushes the movie over the edge. And if you're like me, this is where Malignant will win you over, or it could be where you check out. Like I said, this movie is heavily inspired by the charms and tropes of Italian giallo films. At its core, it's a fun mystery. Madison's boyfriend is murdered at the start of the movie, and she's the prime suspect. And to us, it appears the killings are supernatural in nature, but of course, there's more to be discovered throughout the story. This is another trope of giallo movies, with Madison and the supporting characters eventually questioning her sanity. Its Italian influence becomes especially noticeable around the third kill. This scene is stylishly painted with vibrant red light, and we get some really fun, dramatic shots before a comically violent kill. It's also the scene from the trailer and marketing that referenced or straight up copied The Evil Within, which, to be honest, is what caught my attention to begin with. This scene is the first real shift of tone, and the movie doesn't let up after that. Before this, there's the typical haunted house stuff that felt pretty underwhelming and a little too fast-paced for my taste. But it turns out that stuff was just there to set you up. Kind of a misdirect. I was really happy when the movie just jumped off the rails and leaned into the crazy stuff, but it doesn't really happen until near the end of the movie. Now, I think it gives you enough twists and reveals throughout to keep you entertained and to keep you guessing, but I could see how that end reveal could be a real divisive one. If you're still watching and haven't seen this movie yet, seriously, do yourself a favor and skip to the spoiler-free conclusion of the review. By far, the best part of this movie, at least for me, are its reveals that happen in the last 25 minutes or so. So this is the point in the movie that won me over. I was ready for full-on schlock, and boy, did it deliver. I was so happy that Gabriel wasn't just some ghost or demon, but instead a parasitic twin growing out of the back of Madison's fucking head, taking control of her body to commit the murders without her knowing. I thought it was a really interesting concept and kind of a unique play on your typical possession movie. But mostly, I just love the complete ridiculousness of it all. They set it up throughout the movie with Maddie's head bleeding constantly to the point where I even guessed something along those lines, but thought it was way too out there for this movie. Again, at that point, we're thinking it's a supernatural ghost type movie. But boy, was I happy to be wrong. The rest of the ending kind of turns into horror action schlock, almost like a nightmare version of V for Vendetta. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. I didn't love that stuff as much, and it gets really cheesy towards the end, even setting up a sequel in the last minute. So some of the hype kind of faded for me by the end, but overall, the craziness of it all just won me over, and I kinda think I loved it. It really felt like a modern giallo movie, and frankly, I just wasn't expecting it. I really thought this was going to be another supernatural, Conjuring, Insidious type movie. So do I recommend Malignant? Well, for me, this movie was a pleasant surprise. I really enjoyed the campy tone of the movie, though it did take a while to win me over, especially with some of the dialogue being pretty terrible at the start. But once it did, the movie just kept surprising me, and for the most part I really enjoyed it, to the point where the cheesy dialogue and characters started to work in the movie's favor. The camera work was appropriately stylish and creative throughout, and there are plenty of nods to the giallo subgenre with things like stylized color lighting and sudden intense music, and of course, the mystery killer element. I mean, Gabriel even wears black gloves. I mean, come on. The movie makes nods to other horror subgenres as well. The opening scene, for example, felt straight out of a Sam Raimi movie, and it really sets the tone going forward. It also has some notes of body horror tossed in there for good measure. If I had any complaints about the movie, it would be that some of the kills felt a little underwhelming. This is kind of a slasher movie, and I was kind of hoping for a bit more variety in that area considering the giallo influences, but oftentimes they made me laugh at just how over-the-top, violent, and blunt they were though, so it had that going for it. If you don't mind some good, well-executed, campy horror fun with some pretty cliche character stuff, then this movie is definitely for you. If you can, check this one out. I think you'll enjoy it more with a group of friends. It's not really a scary movie, but instead a campy, fun horror flick that is fun to laugh along with. I watched it alone and laughed to myself. Sadly. Anyway, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Silent Hill's next. That's it for now. Bye.